Work for a cause, not for applause. Live life to express, not to impress. Don't strive to make your presence noticed, just make your absence felt. With these good quotations, let us start our next chapter, that is chapter number 15, our environment. The term environment has a French origin, that means surroundings. So anything that is in the surroundings will make our environment. So what all things we see in our surroundings? Some living things and some non-living things. These non-living things are making our physical environment, that is termed as abiotic environment, whereas the living things form our biotic environment. Surroundings of any geographical location is termed as an ecosystem. Ecosystem, that term comprises of two words, eco and system. Both are from Greek origin. The word eco means environment and the word system means interacting and interdependent complex. Ecosystem we can say as all the biotic as well as abiotic factors of a particular geographical location. For example, if we talk about an ecosystem of a pond, so all the biotic factors will be all the living organisms which live inside the water and the plants which grow inside the water, and abiotic components will be water, the gases dissolved in that, sand, pebbles, whatever we see inside the pond. Based on the origin, ecosystems are of two types, natural ecosystem and artificial ecosystem. As the name suggests, natural is naturally occurring one and artificial is man-made. Natural ecosystem further can be classified into two types, that is temporary and permanent. An ecosystem of the jungle we can consider as a natural ecosystem, whereas an ecosystem of a garden we can consider as an artificial ecosystem. The permanent natural ecosystem can further be classified into two types, terrestrial and aquatic. Further, we can classify the aquatic ecosystem as per the location like freshwater and marine. Now, let us discuss the basic structure of an ecosystem. As we have discussed earlier, that mainly two types of components are there of any ecosystem, that is biotic components and abiotic components. So now we will see what will cover under biotic components of any ecosystem, or what all things will make the biotic components of any ecosystem. The basic level of biotic components are producers. They are autotrophic in nature. By the process of photosynthesis, they can generate the energy for rest of the levels. Next is consumers. They are classified as per their eating habits. Say for example, herbivores are considered as primary consumers as they directly depend upon the plants, and carnivores are forming tertiary and quaternary levels. And at the end, all the living organisms, when they die, decomposers play an important role. They decompose the organic matter and bring them into the cycle of that particular ecosystem so that components can be replenished. So in short, we can say that biotic components are comprising of producers and consumers of different levels. So let's recapitulate. The basic structure of any ecosystem is formed by biotic and abiotic components, where biotic components are made by producers and consumers of different level. Here, producers are generating energy by the process of photosynthesis, and consumers are directly or indirectly depend upon the producers for energy requirements. Now, let us discuss the abiotic components of any ecosystem. Abiotic components are comprising of organic components, inorganic components, and climatic conditions of that particular geographical location. So, we have learnt about biotic and abiotic components in detail. Now, let us discuss how exactly the living organisms are interrelated or what position they occupy in the food chain. Position occupied by any living organism in the food chain is termed as tropical level. As we discussed earlier, the producers form the first tropical level of any ecosystem. As they are at the base, their main function is to produce the energy for rest of the tropical levels which are dependent on them. Other living organisms directly or indirectly depend upon the producers for their energy requirements. For example, the second tropical level is occupied by herbivores. As they directly depend upon the producers, they are at the second level of the food chain. Then these herbivores are eaten up by the carnivores, so they form the third tropic level. These carnivores may be eaten up by higher carnivores, which will form the fourth tropic level. At the top we have decomposers, which will decompose the dead bodies of all producers as well as the consumers on their death and replenish the nutrients back to the cycles into the ecosystem. Now let us try to understand the same topic with the help of energy pyramid. Here at the base you can notice that green plants are occupying the first tropical level of the energy pyramid. Green plants are doing photosynthesis and they convert the solar energy into the chemical energy and make the solar energy available for next tropical level. Secondly, you can notice the primary consumers. Primary consumers are herbivores. They are directly depend upon the plant for their energy requirements. They take up the plant and get the energy of the sun, which plants have converted from solar energy to the chemical energy. These herbivores are further eaten up by carnivores in order to obtain energy. These carnivores are further eaten up by higher carnivores. So in this way, different tropical levels of food chain are formed and transmission of the energy from one tropical level to another tropical level will continue. Based on this, we can define the food chain as series of group of organisms in which there is repeated eating and being eaten, so that the transmission of the energy will continue. To simplify the definition, we can define it as a relationship that depicts who eats whom. Now let us discuss the characteristics of any food chain. The first characteristic is shorter the food chain, higher the amount of energy obtained, and during the transmission of the energy, maximum amount of the energy is lost in the form of heat. As the law of thermodynamics suggests that during transmission of energy from its one form to another, maximum amount of the energy is going to be compromised as heat. Let us try to understand this with the help of the diagram. Again, we are with the energy pyramid diagram. Here you can notice that while transmission of the energy from one tropical level to another, maximum amount of that energy is compromised in the form of heat. Say for example, whatever amount of energy is utilized by the plants during the process of photosynthesis will not be completely transferred to the herbivores when they eat the plants as their food. In same way, whatever amount of the energy herbivores will obtain from the plants will not be completely transferred to the consumers of the next tropical level, and so on. At each tropical level, around 90% of the energy obtained is lost in the form of heat. The next characteristic is the flow of energy is unidirectional. That means whatever energy is transmitted from one tropical level to another will not return to the previous tropical level. Let us try to understand this with an example. Say for example, herbivores are eating the plants. So, the energy obtained by herbivores will not return back to the plants at any cost. This is unidirectional flow of the energy. Next, we are going to discuss about various types of the food chains. The first food chain is grazing food chain. Second one, aquatic food chain, and third one, detritus food chain. Let us understand them one by one in detail. Let us begin with the first type of the food chain, that is terrestrial food chain. As the name suggests, here the organisms which live on land will form a food chain based on their eating habits, and such food chain is termed as terrestrial food chain. In the given food chain, the grasshopper eats grass. Grasshopper is eaten up by the frog. Frog is eaten up by the snake. Snake is eaten up by the hawk. And when hawk dies, its dead body is decomposed by decomposers. Here we can notice the primary source of energy is solar radiation. Green plants are at the producer level, which will do photosynthesis process and generate the energy for the upcoming tropical levels. Herbivores are occupying the space of primary consumers. Carnivores will form different tropical levels, and it is a long food chain. As we discussed earlier, the food chain is longer, so as we go on in the food chain, the energy transmitted at the higher tropical levels will be very less or will reduce gradually. Next we have aquatic food chain. Here also the solar radiations are the primary source of energy. With the help of solar radiations, algae and the planktons, which are unicellular organisms containing chlorophyll, will synthesize the food, so they form the producer level here. Then marine herbivores depend upon them, so they are forming the second tropical level of the food chain, and different types of the fishes are forming the higher tropical levels in this hierarchy. The last type of the food chain is detritus food chain. Dead organic matter is known as detritus. Here, the main source of energy is dead organic matter like fallen leaves or dead bodies of the living organisms. The organisms which eat up this detritus are known as detritivore, and this detritivore are forming the primary consumer level of this detritus food chain. For example, protozoa, bacteria and fungi are detritivore by nature, so that they form the primary consumer level of detritus food chain. Secondary consumer level is formed by larvae or insects, and further this larvae or insects may be eaten up by the birds. These food chains are usually shorter than the grazing food chains. No food chain is independent or operate in a straight line. They are interconnected with each other, and that cluster of various food chains make a food web. Here in the diagram you can notice various food chains are interlinked so as it forms a food web where a number of feeding connections are found. In formation of a food web, interlinking of three types of the food chains are must. The first one is predatory food chain, second one is saprophytic food chain, and third one is parasitic food chain. Now let us revise all these topics through a module.
Food chain and food web. In our earlier session, we learned that an organism depends on one another in series for feeding. This series of organisms at various biotic levels form as a food chain. Each level or step of the food chain form as a trophic level. There are 4 trophic levels. The first trophic level is with autotrophs. They are also called as producers and will be available to next level organisms as food. Example, plants. The second trophic level is heterotrophs, are also called as consumers. Example, grasshopper. The third trophic level is primary consumers, are also called as herbivorous. Example, frog. The fourth trophic level is secondary consumer, are also called as carnivorous. Example, snake. The fifth trophic level is tertiary consumer, or also called as larger carnivorous. Example, eagle. Thus, interaction among various components of environment involves flow of energy from one component to another. As we learned earlier, the energy from autotrophs is transferred to heterotrophs and to decomposers. Thus, it forms as a food chain. As we learned in our previous chapter, sources of energy, when energy changes from one form to another form, some energy is lost which cannot be used. For example, the green plants on earth capture 1% of energy from sunlight and converts into food energy. When the green plants are eaten by primary consumers, some energy is lost to the environment, some goes into digestion and some in doing work, and the rest goes to reproduction and growth. An average 10% of energy from food will be available for next level of consumers. Therefore, 10% of energy is taken as the average amount of organic matter that reaches the next level of consumers. Since less energy is available for the next level of consumers, food chains generally consist of only 3 or 4 steps. So, little usable energy remains after 4 trophic levels. Generally, each organism is eaten by 2 or more other kinds of organisms, which in turn are eaten by several other organisms. Hence, the relationship of food chain are shown as a series of branching lines called a food web. Thus, from the energy flow diagram, we can find the flow of energy is unidirectional. The energy that is captured by the autotrophs does not go back to the solar input, and the energy which passes to the herbivorous does not come back to the autotrophs.
Our next topic is law of energy flow. Before going into topic, let us understand what does it mean by energy flow. Energy that is accumulated by primary producers is transferred through food chain to different trophic levels. This phenomenon is known as energy flow. In simple words, we can say that whatever energy the plants are consuming during the process of photosynthesis from the sun and prepare their food, this food will transfer the solar energy to the next tropical levels and make it available for the consumers of those tropic levels. As we discussed earlier, that 90% of the energy during transmission is wasted in the form of heat, is actually not transferred to the next tropic level. Only 10% of the energy acquired is transferred to the next tropic level. Let us understand the same thing with an illustration. This thing is very important with regard to your board examination. because it is repeatedly asked. So please focus on this particular topic. Whenever plants are doing photosynthesis, plants cannot convert 100% of the solar energy to the chemical energy during this process. Only 1% of the total solar energy received by the plants will be converted during the process of photosynthesis into the chemical energy. So let us assume that 1000 joule energy was available to the plant, but plants could utilize only 1% of that is 10 joule. When this energy is transmitted to the next tropical level by eating habits, the herbivores or the primary consumers will get 10% of the energy acquired by the producers. That means out of 10 joule energy acquired by the producers, only 1 joule energy will be transmitted to the herbivores, that is primary consumers, during transmission of the energy. And 9 joule of the energy is lost in the form of heat into the environment. Now, when carnivores or secondary consumers will receive the energy, only 0.1 joule energy will be available to them. It means as we move up in the energy pyramid, the amount of energy transmitted is reduced drastically. So, in nutshell, what we need to remember is whatever energy of sun the plants are receiving, out of that only 1% of that energy will be available with the plants, and whatever energy is available to the plants, out of that 10% of the energy will be available to the next tropic level, and this continues in the same pattern. The last topic is biomagnification. Biological amplification of non-biodegradable material in the successive tropical level is known as biomagnification. Any of the non-biodegradable material like DDT, when we are using, so it is not going to be degraded in the digestive system of any living organism. So it keeps on accumulating in their body, and as we move up in the energy pyramid, the amount of that particular non-biodegradable material will be amplifying. This phenomenon is known as biomagnification. Scientists have observed a terrifying report. That is, in the breast milk of mother, a dangerous level of DDT particles were noticed. It means whatever non-biodegradable materials like DDT, any other pesticides or insecticides, or even the fertilizers which we are using in our agriculture keeps on accumulating in the plants and gets amplified into the next tropical level. Now let's see what are the other human impacts on the natural environment. Have you ever wondered by cricketers painting their faces white? Or why do some people apply sunscreen lotion before stepping out during summer? The answer is UV rays of the sun. Ultraviolet rays or UV rays are harmful for us. They can increase the chances of skin cancer, they can cause cataract or harm to our immune system, they may damage to the plant life, aquatic ecosystem, or even can kill the unicellular organisms. Life on the earth is protected by UV rays by a layer in the stratosphere of ozone. Ozone is a gas made up of 3 oxygen atoms. The layer of ozone is about 3 to 5 mm thick. This thinly spread out layer has been protecting the life on the earth since billions of years. Our ozone layer is now being deteriorated by certain man-made chemicals, primarily chlorofluorocarbon or nitrogen dioxide. CFCs are a group of chemical substances used in refrigerator or air conditioners. Nitrogen dioxide is a byproduct of fuel burning, for example, aircraft exhaust. What is an ozone hole? Ozone hole is not a literally hole, but it is an area where the amount of ozone gas is less. So can we stop ozone layer depletion? Yes, we can. By reduction of usage of chlorofluorocarbon and nitrogen dioxide. Apart from these two, another potent chemical that can deplete around 1 lakh molecules of ozone by single molecule of itself is chlorine. Ozone is actually poisonous when it's inhaled, but it protects us from the harmful UV radiations of the sun. That is why it is very useful for us. So now let us understand how the ozone is formed. When UV rays fall on a molecule of oxygen, it splits the oxygen atoms apart, and the separated oxygen or single atom of oxygen is now known as nascent oxygen. This nascent oxygen is highly reactive, so it reacts with another molecule of oxygen and forms a trio that is known as ozone. And this ozone is lifesaver for us as it protects us from the harmful UV radiations of the sun. Ozone layer depletion is not the only problem that we face. Apart from ozone layer depletion, there are many more problems like how to manage the solid waste produced. So now let us see a module to ensure the solid waste management in appropriate way.
Hi kids! Today we will learn about biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. So let's start. All the waste we generate from our households, factories, and farms can be categorized as either biodegradable or non-biodegradable waste. Let's first learn what is biodegradable waste. The waste material that can be broken down in weeks or months by natural agents like water, oxygen, UV rays of the sun, acid rains, bacteria, and other micro and macro organisms into very simple compounds. That is, they dissolve and ultimately becomes part of the soil, are known as biodegradable waste. Example, if you throw some food waste in the soil and let it stay there for a few days or weeks, you will not find it there anymore, as it ultimately gets dissolved and becomes part of the soil. That is, it breaks down into simpler substances. And these simpler compounds are actually nutrients that add to the nutritive value of the soil and make the soil fertile. Different types of waste takes different amount of time to break down. All types of waste that break down in weeks or months and becomes part of the soil are known as biodegradable waste. And such wastes are no threat to the environment. Our kitchen waste is most common example of biodegradable waste. More examples of biodegradable waste are kitchen food waste, manure, sewage waste, slaughterhouse waste, and paper waste. Biodegradable waste can be used in many ways. Biodegradable waste can be used for making compost, which is an organic manure. Biodegradable waste is used for making a source of energy, which is known as biogas. In the absence of oxygen, biodegradable waste decays and produces a gas called methane, which is used as fuel through various biogas plants. And this biogas can be used as a normal fuel for heating, cooking, and even generating electricity. So kids, we learned what are the biodegradable wastes and their uses. Now we will learn what are non-biodegradable wastes. The waste that cannot break down into simpler molecules by various natural agents in even hundreds of years is called as non-biodegradable waste. Non-biodegradable materials do not react with anything or dissolve in any medium. That is, these kinds of wastes are not affected by any harsh weather conditions like humidity, pressure, and temperature. So these wastes do not contribute to the environment, but are just increasing the size of huge wastelands. And also, the plastic, which is the biggest non-biodegradable waste today, is hazardous to the environment as firstly, it takes hundreds of years to break down. And when it starts to break down, it releases toxic chemicals that goes in the soil as well as in the air and also goes to the water through soil. So it causes air pollution, water pollution, and soil pollution. So non-biodegradable waste cannot break down and just increases the size of huge wastelands. So we should recycle them. That is, we should try to reuse them as much as possible. Like plastic waste can be sent to the Plastic Recycle Center, where it is molded again to make new objects. Non-biodegradable objects include aluminum cans, glasses, plastic products, metal scrap, and bottles. So kids, we should always be knowing which kind of material are biodegradable and what kind of wastes are non-biodegradable, so that we always prefer to use biodegradable material and save our earth from pollution and dirty, filthy sites. Let's learn what we can do to save our earth from the big waste sites. Always remember, cleaning and protecting our earth starts from our home. So we should reduce the use of non-biodegradable materials so that less non-biodegradable waste is generated. And also keep different types of waste in different bins. And then different types of waste should be collected separately or sorted later on. And then each type of waste should be sent to the appropriate recycling center. We should use our waste as much as we can to produce something useful from it, like compost and biogas from biodegradable waste, recycle plastic for making new plastic objects, recycle paper to make new paper from it. Municipal waste can be sent to incineration plants that produces energy from the waste. Chemicals and other hazardous waste should be treated before dumping them in the ground, and there are many and much more advanced waste management techniques that we will learn later on. So kids, today we learned a lot about biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste.
Let's see through an animation what misery we have created to our environment and for other living beings. Complete the fair notebook as we are doing for rest of the chapters. Write in text, exercise, NCERT exemplar in your fair notebook and read the chapter thoroughly. Stay home, stay safe.